Ladies and gentlemen, Adam is about to come on and talk about the power of people, building up your team. If you want to grow your business, if you want to grow your networking ability, really leverage relationships, like really care about people, transform how you relate to people, definitely stick around. Adam and I are going to dive in deep. Before we get to that, I want to say thank you so much for tuning in, for choosing to be your greatest possible self, for being here and now. Just taking one step at a time. That's how you achieve anything and everything you set your heart, your mind, and your soul to. So keep showing up, taking one step at a time. Next up is our iTunes review of the week. I believe it's by SwartzB22, who says, "Win. Chris inspires by encouraging everyone to become the greatest possible self so you can become all you were created to be." SwartzB22, thank you so much for that review. If you want a chance to get shouted out on a future 12-hour live stream, go to beyourgps.com/iTunes or search Greatest Possible Self on the Apple Podcast Store. Give us a review. Let us know what you love, what you want to see more of, how we can improve the show for you, and hit that subscribe button while you're there so you can keep getting all the latest updates, episodes, and keep taking one step at a time into your GPS. I'm going to introduce Adam in just a second. Before that, grab a piece of paper, grab a pen, be ready to take notes. This is going to be an epic interview that we dive into to empower you, and you definitely want to stick around all the way through to the end because one idea or one relationship has the power to change everything for you. Let's introduce Adam, and then we'll get started. He is a culture-driven leader focused on showing individuals and companies how to create culture that has high-performing teams come from it. He shows organizations of all sizes how people are the root cause of the numbers that drive your success. Adam is working on publishing his first book this year on his ACES leadership model. And we're blessed to have Adam with us here today. Adam, you ready to bring it live, bro?
I'm ready to bring it, man. I'm excited.
All right, we are live. We are live, you legendary leadership epic human being. Let's dive into this theme of today, man. It is using crises to fuel creation. Adam, thank you for being here. What does that mean for you, man?
Yeah, so I think it's a really interesting time. With everybody being pushed to work at home right now, it's huge to really consider, how we impact people, in this connected economy, in this connected world, as we push away from spending time face to face with people and really building that digital presence. And so, for me, it's really about bringing it on a level that is still personal, even though we change our communication modalities, and so that to me is what it's all about, is just keeping it personal, even though we're not sitting in the same place at the same time all the time. So
yeah, I love it, man. And I think the key I'm hearing there is personal for me means care, really care. Like how are you doing, and taking that time to send a message, to jump on a call, to ask like, how are you doing? It's always better if we do it in person. And like in these more interesting opportunity filled times, how do we choose to show up and stay connected with people,
Yeah, it's huge. It's really interesting, because it's in business, we have to take the balance of how many conference calls can I possibly be on in a day and still really get what I need to do done.
Yep.
Right. And so, so when I think about the personal touch, I was talking about this a little bit this morning on my LinkedIn page. When I think about that personal touch, right, there's opportunities in everything that we do, every type of communication we have with our team, whether it be email, whether it be a conference call, whether it be a video call, whether it be chat, to really embody that culture of how we approach people, right? And so stepping back and doing those simple things like asking, how's your day going? What can I help you with? How can I help you be successful? As you start any kind of conversation with anybody is really, it's something that's critical to me. It's something that I really focus on when I drive teams. So, I think that in itself is a huge way to start. Just really any communication. It breaks down those barriers of, I'm just here to crack the whip and drive the ship. It brings it back to that personal level.
Yeah.
So
Good stuff, man. Let's talk about the work that you're doing as a leadership and business coach in, helping teams, helping cultures. Tell us more about that, man.
Yeah. So, for me, culture is a huge piece of business. It's really, if you look at successful businesses, right, they're solely driven by the culture of the community within the team. You hear so often this focus on, customers first, customers first, customers first. I step back and I say, let's put our people first. Let's put
Yeah.
our teams first. Let's
Yeah.
put our employees first, right? Because at the end of the day, if they're happy and engaged, everything else that happens within the business is going to be that much better. It's going to be that next step up. And so, I find it's really interesting because culture, um, statistically, there's been a ton of surveys on it, but statistically, the majority of CEOs and company leaders know what they want the culture to be,
Right.
right? They have a very clear vision of it. They understand what it's supposed to be.
Hmm.
However, that same large group also feels very disconnected to what the culture actually is.
Wow.
And so what I've found is that there's a big breakdown from what is the message to what is actually happening.
Wow.
And so, you know, I work with companies to really kind of bridge that gap, right? And so uh, we start off with really talking about what is your culture supposed to be,
Mhm.
right? And how did you portray that to your teams? And what I find is once you get past about 3 levels of leadership, what's really interesting is that, um, it's like the age old game of telephone, right?
Mhm.
The message starts really clear, and by the time you get to the fifth or sixth person, all of a sudden it's like it's totally different.
Wow.
And so I start with how are we driving that message, and so um, really what I found is best is getting whomever is in charge of that message in front of the people that should be embodying it the most, which is the people on the front lines. It's the people that are interfacing with your customers. It's the people that are leading your primary teams that get the work done.
Mm.
And so, whether that be a webinar, whether that be a pre-recorded video, um, you know, there, there's so many methods that we can get that message out there, but that message needs to come directly from that person and not through the chain, right?
Wow.
Because, by the time it gets there, it's just skewed, right?
Mm.
The other thing I talk about a lot is how often you're actually checking in on your culture, right?
Mm.
So many companies do the annual culture survey, the annual employment engagement survey, right?
Yep.
And once a year, just ain't enough. It ain't cutting it, right? Um, I come from a background of working in call centers, and in call centers, if you're not familiar, have just a huge turnover rate. It's kind of the nature of the beast of low pay, high stress, and lots of hours, right?
Yep.
So it really is the nature of the beast. But what I found is that these companies are doing these annual culture surveys, and they're like, oh, we increased this year. Yeah, but you also turned over 212% of your staff, which means everybody that took it last year didn't take it again this year.
Wow.
So is that a true measure, right? It's
Mm.
it's not. And so we step back and go, how do we embody this more frequently? So and depending on the organization, it really depends on what that frequency is. Sometimes I encourage at least doing a quarterly check on it. It doesn't have to be the full blown, 500 questions, big in depth thing. But you can get a pretty good pulse check with about 15 questions,
Hmm.
15 core questions, about what's going on. So, uh, so even if once a quarter you're asking 15 core questions in survey and compiling that data, you can at least get a pulse check of what's going on in your organization or how you need to make those changes and adjustments to it,
Wow.
right? And so it really dives into how do we make those changes and adjustments, and so it really stems from clear communication.
Mm.
And so that's you mentioned my book that I'm working on this year in the ACEs leadership model, right? And that is the first piece of the ACEs leadership model, is all built around communication or acknowledgement, right? So how are we communicating with our teams? And so, we go back to the basics and go, how often have you said thank you to every person on your team? Because I find, it's ingrained in us at a very young age, but the amount of times that we actually say it in business, it's very, very minimal. And so, I've never been told ever to stop telling somebody thank you.
There's too much gratitude here. Gosh, I can't deal with it.
Exactly, right? Nobody's going to say that to you. Sorry, it's a whole different ball game. But thank you, everybody appreciates that, right?
Yes.
And so, thank you for your contribution. Thank you for being here today. It is at the fundamental of just starting communication with our teams, right? And when you start building that appreciation and that genuine appreciation for your team, and start building that trust level, when you get to the more difficult conversations, the conversations about slipping performance, about missing deadlines, about, I was late 4 days last week because of life happened, right? It's easier to have those conversations because you're not starting the conversation by having to build all this trust. You already have it there. You've already shown them that you appreciate their effort. And now when you have that conversation, you can have it more constructively because you can focus it more so on, how you're there to help support them to be successful. Right. So, and that really leads off the whole ACEs model is really just big in how we're communicating with our teams. Not so much sitting behind our desk shouting orders, but how I'm in the trenches with them, how I'm there to help show them that I want to support them, that I'm going to give them the information and answer the questions and be there to be their cheerleader as they complete different pieces of their task or process or project.
Yeah,
So
this is great, Adam. I love this, man. And I think you're giving us like really practical stuff. The quarterly assessment, I thought that was great with like 15 questions, saying thank you, just practicing that acknowledgement and doing it before the crises happens, before the breakdown, the like need to do a difficult conversation. I think is so important, and it's so easy to do, and it's also easy not to do. So it's like just taking one step at a time. I think for me, what really has worked for me is when I put something in my calendar, like that it's important, then I will do it. If I put in my calendar, every day at 10 a.m. or something like that, find something to say thank you for, depending on how big the team is, like say it to every person on my team, go say thank you, like depending on how many people we want to say that to, then that's like totally doable if we make it a priority, and the dividends that it pays, the trust that it builds, like long term is enormous, man.
yeah, no, it's really funny that you mentioned the calendar thing because I've done that so many times. And I always target if I can be available in the first half an hour that they're there for the day. That is, to me, that's a really critical time because it shows that when they're coming in, what they're there to do, and it's an opportunity for you to ask, how can I support you today?
Wow.
Right. And so then I also like to set the last half an hour that they're there, or the last half an hour that I'm there, depending on how shifts work. Right. And so, and follow up to that, thank you for your effort today. Is there anything that you need from me so that you can be successful and jump right in tomorrow?
Wow.
Right. And so it's the same kind of concept. It's just on the end of it so that you can make sure that they were able to be successful during the day that they were there.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to go back to when you made the transition to be the trainer and the coach for culture, bringing that to organizations. Like, why did you make that transition out of like, hey, I just was doing this for companies before, and like kind of internally and being a part of the staff, and then saying, hey, like I want to be more of a consultant role. Why did that happen for you, man?
Honestly, I watched a whole lot of bad leadership over the years, and I said, I talked to a lot of people and network a ton, and everybody talks about the same gripes with building culture in their organization, and I go, there's a huge opportunity for me to take all of my experience, all of my knowledge, everything that I drive and everything that I believe in, and really instill this into the bigger picture, right? Because at the end of the day, it's all about people, and so I want to be able to give back anything that I can to help people be just in genuinely better, whether that be, gratitude, trust, knowledge. There's so many things that we can give back that don't take anything away from us.
Yeah.
And so if we all take just a few minutes to give back, and that's really what it came down to, is I started going, and sharing a lot of this on LinkedIn and sharing a lot of my experience, and people, started to go, wow, that's really cool. That's really great. And became really engaged in it. And it kind of set me on a path to say, you know what, I can do this in a bigger picture.
Yeah. Wow, dude. So you're building this book, this ACEs model. Tell us a little bit more about like what people can expect when they implement this strategy and this framework that you're bringing to corporations and companies.
Yeah, so it's really built on a few foundational principles, right? The first one we already talked about, communication. From there, we jump into goal setting, and really tying goal setting back to the individual. Right? And at the end of the day, most line level employees, most individual contributors could care less if the company makes 5% more in profits next year. Right. Unless they're going to see it on their paycheck, they don't care. Right? But they may want to be a leader. They may want to move into a different role within the company, a different skill set. And so if I can tie those goals back to what the corporate goals are, we have a win-win situation on our hands, right? And so I really work with leaders on how do you tie your individual team's goals back to the corporate goals, back to the numbers, back to the KPIs, that we have to really pay attention to, And if we can do that and be successful with that, then everybody wins. Our employees are engaged because they see their growth. Our company is engaged because they see the growth, and everybody makes more money.
Can we talk about like practically what that might look like?
Yeah, so practically, a lot of it is sitting down with leaders and just really having those one-on-one conversations and really modeling the behavior for them, right? So I start with just modeling. What are your goals? What is your 5-year plan? What is your 1-year plan? What do you want to accomplish? What's your dream job? Just start really diving into them as an individual person. And so, what I found is once they start to reel that back, then you go, this is the conversation you need to be having with every single person on your team at least a couple times a year. Yeah. And you see the light bulb go on. They get really excited about it because you've taken this interest in how they want to grow, and they're like, yeah, I want to grow, and they get really excited. And so, and when you apply that to your team, it really helps your team become really high performing. And so then I'll sit in with conversations with their team with them, and let's have that same conversation. And so I might lead one and then let them lead one, or we might tag team. It depends on their comfort level, how well they're communicating with their team. And I've been in situations where it's challenging because they're not communicating well with their team. They haven't built that trust ahead of time. So it's, you kind of get this little bit of standoffish behavior. But on the same token, I've also, been in those meetings where they're really engaged and excited that they see a change in their leader. And so then they become really engaged and excited. And over time, when you start doing this over time, what you'll see is you'll see your KPI performance start to increase. Yeah, I honestly think, and this is not a scientific data-driven number. This is just an observational number. I honestly think that most people work at about 60 to 65% efficiency in a day, right? And so, so our goal as leaders is to get them to work closer to that 90, 100%. And so what I see is when you start investing in your people and driving their goals
Mm-hmm.
and giving them the education and training, which is the next piece in the ACEs model, but giving them that education and training to help accomplish those goals and then empowering them, you see their work energy, their work effort start to increase. And so, over time, what happens is you go from a team that was, meeting everything and they were only working at 60, 70%, capacity to now they're just blowing their numbers away because, now they're just fully engaged and like, I want to be a better person so that I can move on to the next thing.
Yeah, it's like challenging themselves to grow and experience their greatest potential, right? Like so many,
Yep.
like that 60 to 65%, it's because they're complacent. They don't have a reason to dig deeper. They have habits and behaviors that are unsupportive of maximum performance, and they're taking things for granted. They're not pushing themselves and challenging themselves, getting outside of their comfort zone. And then also probably those good behaviors of like thank you and asking their teammates how they can support and feeling connected, effective
Yep.
communication between different departments and things like that. Like all of those start to transform when someone's bought in to say, hey, how could I get 5% more effectiveness, productivity, results out of my life? How could I achieve that goal faster? And then, like you said, linking up the company goals with their goals, I think is brilliant, man.
Yeah, it's huge, and the key, the wrapper, what pulls it all together
Yeah.
is that I take a different approach to how we celebrate, right? So we talk about winning, learning from failure a lot.
Right.
Everybody says, "Oh, you learn from your mistakes, learn from your mistakes," and that's awesome, and we do, and we should. But we can learn in the same way from success as well.
Mm.
We just have to dive into it the same way. When we win, what do? We go, hurrah, we won, and we leave it there. Everybody gives high fives and we move on to the next task because we won, right? But if we take a moment to step back and really uh, you know, tie in the same deep dive methodology that we take to our failures
Wow.
and successes and go, why did we win? How did we win? How can we win more next time? We can learn from that. And what I find by talking about success in that way, positivity breeds positivity, right?
Yeah.
So, it really jumps it to that next level because now everybody's excited because we won. And they're even more excited because they understand why we won.
Mm. It's like
So,
that awareness helps make more conscious decisions. And also just the more often someone hears something, that repetition, it ingrains it into their subconscious mind instead of just being like pure effort every time of consciousness. And then, the thank yous start to become like, they're not hollow or empty, but they start to become more automatic in a generous, like loving, abundant way. It's like
yeah.
it really just starts to flow out because it feels good and it produces better results, and everyone wants to keep feeling that.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right, and that's really where I drive it to is how can we just really pull this positive feeling all the way through the process from the time I walk in the door to the time I walk out of work. How can I have a positive experience for that 8, 9 hours, whatever it is, and really feel like I won for the day.
Yeah.
And so, it's really I think it's critical that we stop and take a moment to really really focus on how a team is performing in a positive light more frequently than we do. High fives are great and it's good and it drives morale, but we don't learn anything from it.
Right.
And so um, I always take opportunities to how can we learn from this and be better? Whether we won, whether we lost, whether we just did okay and met expectations. How can we learn from that? And that's something that I talk to a lot of leaders about. Is taking that moment to when you wrap up with something, reflect on it. And really take a moment to think about what did I do well? What could I have done better? You know, it's that the age old did well, do differently
Mm-hmm.
mindset. But you know, in so often we hear that in negative terms, you know, in how we coach and things like that. And it's a great coaching tool, but it's also it's a great personal coaching tool. But we have to make ourselves vulnerable
Mm.
as leaders to the process, and sometimes that's hard
Yep.
to internalize and go, you know what, I really screwed this up, and yeah, and dive into how I could have approached it differently to fix it and be better with it.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, but there's a lot of power in that
Yeah.
as well. And so, you know, I always encourage leaders to write down their challenges, write down things that they felt like they struggled with, things that they felt like they did well with, and revisit that on a daily basis. You know, it's kind of a, you know, it's when you put your lessons learned out on a piece of paper, it's a little less internalized,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a little, you can be a little more objective about it.
Yeah.
I find it when you get it out of here and put it out on, you know, put it out for the world to see, it's easier to deep dive into. So
Yeah.
so I walk through that exercise a lot with leaders as well, and just stepping back and making them understand that they need to show that humility to their teams as well.
Yeah.
And
And when
because if they do, their teams are going to show that same humility back to them, and then
mm,
everybody's stronger.
yeah, I'm curious. You've probably seen what would you recommend if there's a disagreement between like leadership on culture and like it ends up like let's talk about what happens if it's resolvable and then what happens if it's like irreconcilable and like there's leaders with two different visions.
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. Actually, it just sat down with my partner over at Oliveira Agency. We do digital marketing, and you know, we sat down with our team and did a whole mission, values, and goal planning session.
Yeah.
You know, and really dialed in the culture. And so, you know, what I learned or what I took away from that in doing the exercise the way that we did with the team being involved was really that you know, we need to first step back and have a conversation. What is our mission here, right? What are
Mm.
we all trying to accomplish, right? And get on the same page with that. And so we had a conversation about what's important to you. Why do you get up every day? Why do you do this every day? You know, what makes it a challenge to do this every day? And we kind of took some key notes and some key takeaways from that, and just really, you know, took those foundational messages that were in what, you know, what we talked about, and came up with, you know, our vision, or I'm sorry, our mission. We have the vision. We know what we want to do. We want to be a leader in digital marketing. So you know, but our mission is really around doing that in an, you know, in an ethical manner that, you know, that is collaborative with our clients and our customers, and really is built on integrity and trust, right?
Yep.
And so these are all themes that, as we discussed this as a team, that came out, and so that's how we built that mission and value set, right? And so I think the key there is about communicating and being open, and being honest, and really putting together, whoever is driving that ship, putting together the total message, the total packet, as a culmination of what everybody feels we're here to do.
Mm.
Right. And so, you know, it can't be one sided, because that's where that disconnect we were talking about, you know, where leaders say, I know what the culture is, or what I want it to be, and I know what it is, and they're not the same. That's where that disconnect starts from, right? Is because we haven't stopped and said, why are we all here?
Mm.
Why do we come in the morning? Right. And so, um, so it's a really interesting process when you start driving through it. It's driven from a similar process that I've done with helping people develop their unique selling proposition, from a sales and marketing end. Um, and so it's kind of that similar, who are we serving? What are we doing for them? What does our brand stand for? And then kind of tying all that together, right? It's a similar methodology, just a little more internalized to why are we doing this?
Yeah.
Right. And so communication is the key. It really goes back to communication. When it doesn't work, you really need to take a step back as an organization and and really go, why is this not working? Right? Because at that moment, as an organization, you've officially said that you don't have a clear vision and you don't have a mission, which means really from the business end of what you're doing, you don't know where you're going or how you're going to get there. And those are the two most critical pieces of building a business foundation.
Yep.
So, so I don't think there's room in an organization for it to be successful to have that disagreement. And if it exists, you need to take a step back and maybe come up with a couple of different mission and vision statements, from everybody that's disagreeing, and then have somebody else, a third party, kind of mediate it all back into one package that everybody's happy with. Right. If not, maybe it's time to, go your separate ways and move on. But, fundamentally, I don't feel like when you're talking about mission, values, culture of your company, these are really foundational principles of being successful.
Yeah.
You have to be clear and you have to know what those are before you can move forward and really be successful as a business.
Yeah. I want to go back to the ACEs model and just recap that. I think there's still more to unpack there. So let's do that. What have we covered so far and what else do we need to know about it, man?
Yeah. So, ACEs is really, it's acknowledgement, which is really all about communication. It's cultivating. So how do we cultivate our talent? This is through proper goal planning, tying those goals in, and then training, right? Because if we leave goals on the table and don't provide any kind of education or support for it, they're words, they're dreams at that point, more or less, right? And so, I find it really important that as we talk about goals, we talk about how do we accomplish those goals by providing training and support. Does that mean giving one of your employees time to go mentor with another team in the business? Does that mean sending them to a conference? Does that mean providing e-learning solutions? There's so many technology-driven solutions that people can pick up new skill sets, now that don't take a whole lot of time away from what they need to accomplish on a day-to-day basis. I'm a firm believer that I think, every month you should really be dedicating 4 to 5 hours into employee development per person, right? So every person in your team should have about 4 to 5 hours of employee development time set aside out of their functional, productive time. Because what that does is that fosters an environment where people are excited to learn and build new skills. And so, so I really like to build that foundation into what a company is doing and go, how do we set up these opportunities to be effective in the organization? So, from training, we get into empowering our team, right? Because we can set the goals, we can teach them how to accomplish those goals, but if we never give them a chance to accomplish those goals, by the time they're ready to move because they're a rock star at what they're doing, they've never had a chance to practically apply any of it. So, really what I find is as you get different tasks and projects within your team, it's setting your team up to be the owners of those different tasks as they relate to their goals. So if you have somebody that wants to be a leader on your team, wants to essentially replace you when you move up to the next step, right? make them a project leader and give them the support so that they can go be successful under your guidance, right? And now when they're tasked the next time with being a leader, they've already done it once and they've had that guide, that compass there to help them be successful the first couple of times that they did it, right? If you have somebody that wants to learn a new skill set, figure out how that skill set can apply into different pieces of the organization or different projects that you might have going on in the organization. So, a great example is, software developers, right? Software developers, they always have their pet projects going on. Everyone that I've ever talked to has some sort of side project going on, right? Wow. When you're talking about their goals with them, in figuring out, what they're passionate about, what they want to learn about, finding ways to tie those pet projects, those side projects into revenue generating activities that will benefit the company is a win-win for everybody, right? Wow. So if they're like, I really want to develop an app to do this functionality, right? Cool. Does that functionality benefit us? There's a way we could probably tie maybe not that direct project, but a similar project into what we're doing that makes sense, right? And so now I have a reason to task them to do something with that project.
Yeah,
and everybody wins.
That's so good, because you tap into what they're naturally already passionate about, and then you apply that into the workplace. And it's like, what better way to get people engaged and excited than to take something that they feel is like theirs? It's like, yes, this is mine. I want to be a champion for it. I want to get it across the finish line. I want to finish it. Plus, I'm getting support from my team, from my leadership, to execute on this effectively. Like, that's such a win-win.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And there's so many things that people are passionate about, that if we just take a few minutes and think about a creative approach and how we can tie that back to the organization, it's a no-brainer. Like I said, leadership. If you have a project, who wants to lead this project, right? I find effective delegation from a leader standpoint is not. It's not pushing off projects. It's finding the people that want to lead those initiatives, and helping support them to do that effectively, right? And so, it provides me more time to be focused on them.
Yeah.
And that's the way I always look at delegation. It's not pushing things off. It's how can I create more time in my day to support you as a member of my team?
How do you effectively delegate as far as giving them what they need to succeed? Like what kind of context, what kind of constraints, what kind of guidance and leadership do you see really is important for that effective delegation?
Yeah, so that is a great question. I think that's something that that leaders miss on a lot but so the first thing is clear objectives, right? So what are we trying to accomplish here? Let's make sure that we are perfectly clear on our objectives and goals for whatever we're trying to accomplish, because any kind of gray area that sits in that is a really good and probably a likely opportunity that the project is going to fail or veer off course. So from clear objectives and goals, then it's setting appropriate steps, and that can be done by you as the leader. That could be done in combination with you and that person, or you and the team, whatever is appropriate for the project. But setting clear steps and clear milestones, it is really critical to that. Also setting clear timelines for everything. Right, so we're getting back to the basics of SMART goals, essentially, in PMO 101, right? But really, that's what it's about. When you delegate, you're essentially giving somebody a project that's outside of their normal scope of what they do, and so we have to have goals and objectives. We have to have clear milestones. We have to have a timeline. And we have to have a set, clear channel for communication. And when I say a set, clear channel for communication, that's when is communication going to occur? How is it going to occur? and what happens if something happens outside of the norm that we need to communicate.
Wow.
Right. And so we set clear parameters around that. So I find, the first project or two that I typically task people with, I tend to be a little more micromanager-ish.
Sure.
And it's not because I don't think they're competent. It's because I want to make sure that they're following the right process and staying clear on the process.
Yeah, it's like setting expectations. Like, hey, I'm doing this because I want you to succeed, and I want to make sure that there's no unmet expectations, and how I want this to be done in the ideal best way. Like once you get that down, then you can add on whatever creative flourishes you want, but let's make sure we get it right from the beginning.
Yep, exactly. Usually by about the third project, you can, you can get out the long leash and you kind of let them go and know that things are going to get done, get done on a right path. Also found that using the tools that are available, there's so many great project management tools out there, even free ones that you can use as a leader to kind of manage your team and your objectives and your team, is a really good part of the communication piece, right? So, at Elevator we use Asana. It's a great tool. It's free, and it's got probably, I'd say 80 to 90% of the project management features and tools that you would need for most projects.
Yeah.
It's not as robust as a Salesforce or some of those other ones, but at the communication level, it gets the job done.
Yeah, especially if we're like implementing it in the beginning to get up to speed, then I think it's important to do what works as quickly as possible and then like get everyone effective at that. And then it's like, hey, if there's still a gap after using this for long enough, then we consider other options.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so, it's, I always like that approach of whatever we can get up that's fastest, that's going to make the most sense for now.
Yep.
But I also, understand like sometimes the constraints in business that we have, like getting something through the purchasing department, right? So you always have to keep that in mind. So I always keep a kind of a back pocket of tools that are free that I don't need anybody's permission to be a part of, that even if I can self-manage from it, it helps out, and there's tons of great tools out there that are free, free for basic use, and so if you're just managing a team of 10 or 15 people in very pointed projects or very pointed workflows, things like that, there's countless amounts of tools out there to build those free workflows without having to harass your purchasing department and get 6 letters of approval and make sure you put the cover sheet on the faxes that you send across the world, right? So but I always keep that stuff in my back pocket as options for quick deployment. So I always take a moment and step back and go, how can we make sure that we get the right tools in place, right? Sometimes the quick tool is great for quick implementation, but in the long run, it may add additional frustrations to what's going on. So, so I always step back and do the deep dive and go, what's the right tool for this? And how long would it take to actually get that done? That's right. Good. And so whether you're talking to, somebody that doesn't have purchasing power versus somebody that does have purchasing power, that typically changes that timeline. So, just being clear on what that timeline would be and what the impact of that timeline would be if we didn't make that correct decision first. So sometimes rework is frustrating.
Yep. Yeah. Dude, this is great, Adam. I want to talk about the unique perspective that marketing and having that skill set and building that company, how that makes a difference in how you do business coaching and leadership and cultures and help within cultures. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So, everything we do is marketing, right? So, we're this conversation at the end of the day is marketing, right?
Totally.
And so, I find, that what I take away in the marketing space, we focus more so on digital marketing than other methodologies, because we know what works in websites. We know what works in SEO. We know how to get found on Google. You know, we've built a team that's experts in that space. If we need mail vendors and all those other pieces of marketing, we can go find those people.
Yeah.
But what I found is that everything we do is marketing, that you apply to communicating with people, and you can apply that to what you do in the marketing space, and vice versa. What you're doing on your website, what your company is doing on their website, what your company is doing in Facebook and Twitter and all the social spaces. All that stuff is mutually interchangeable, right? And so, you can even take a step back and go, everything that I do as a leader is marketing, right? We've all started a new leadership position. What's the first thing you have to do? Build trust with your team.
Yep.
Marketing your expertise is, I'm an expert in this space, and I'm here to support and guide and build an effective team. And so you have to market that. You have to show people why they should listen to you, why you're the expert. A good buddy of mine, Monty Clark, he calls it the T, right? So it's the trust, expertise, and authority. And so we're always marketing our trust, expertise, and authority in everything that we do, and how we communicate with people, and how we accomplish things, how we put our foot forward, in different situations, how we lead projects, how we close projects, and everything is all about building that trust, expertise, and authority in the people that we are interfacing with and communicating with. And so, marketing is a huge piece of what we do on a daily basis. Though people don't call it marketing, they call it culture, personal communication, relationship building, networking. Right. All kinds of different names that we call it for the human side of it, but it's marketing.
Yep.
And so, that's where the marketing comes in, is like, I know what works from a communication standpoint on the world of the internet. We got a team of experts that are great at getting information out there on the internet. I can take that same philosophy and apply it to how I communicate with people one-on-one. And really, my big thing is just about giving information out, right? So many people worry about, if I give all my information out, somebody's going to steal all my ideas and go do it. Gary V sums it up best. He says, 1% of people are actually going to think about doing something with your information, and 1% of that 1% are actually going to do something with it. And by that 1%, the 1% of the 1%, by the time they get to something that's going to rival what you're already doing with it, they're not competition for you anyway.
Nope.
Right. And so, that's where I'm just all about, whatever I can give out and help people be successful, both in business and personal, and in their individual endeavors. That's really what it's all about. That's where I say it's the power of people, right? If we first focus on the people, everything else that we want to accomplish will happen.
Yeah, dude, I love it. Is there anything else you really wanted to drive home around building that team and building these powerful relationships with people that you've seen is important in business, marketing, or culture building?
I think the fallacy that we live in is that relationships are built instantaneously, right? And So, so many people go and they're like, well, I made a great first impression. Well, that's awesome, but you didn't build a relationship. You made an impression, right? And so, I encourage people to take a moment to step back and go, this isn't going to happen overnight. This is going to take time. Changing your culture in your organization is not a 1 week project. It's not a 3 week project. It's probably a 3 year project at the end of the day. But you have to constantly be living in building that culture, building those relationships, driving that people first mindset. And over time, what will happen is you'll start to see a shift. I started this shift really aggressively June of last year. And really going, Monty actually, he talked to me about the T philosophy. He goes, man, you've got so much information. You just got to get it out there so people believe and build that relationship and trust with you. And I'm like, I don't know. So like, finally I'm like, forget it. I'm going all in on it. Right.
Yep.
And 3 months later, I was still like skeptical because I'd seen a little bit of change, but nothing like tangible. Now we're 8 months in, 9 months in, right? And like it's a night and day difference when I take a moment to look back.
Wow.
How I communicate with people, how people communicate with me, the conversations that I'm having with people are so much more impactful because I just focus on how can I give out and make people better. And so, it didn't happen overnight. It took 9 months to get to where I'm at, and I wholeheartly believe this is going to be a lifetime journey. I'm forever going to be growing in this space, and so just don't let that I wasn't successful today mindset stop you from being successful tomorrow.
That's right, dude. Gold. Adam, this is awesome. I want to let our audience know, like, who are the people that you love to work with, and how do they get in contact with you, man?
Yeah, so I am all in right now. So in the marketing space, working really heavily in the roofing and restoration industry. So elevateragency.com is our website where they can go on, hit our contact page, find me on LinkedIn. I am not hard to find on LinkedIn whatsoever. Just recently launched my Facebook presence, so you can find me on Facebook as well, Twitter. I'll just search Adam Sinkus. I show up. Search me on Google. I show up there pretty well now too. So
love it.
So we're working roofing restoration from a marketing side of things. We'll work with anybody, but that's our primary industry right now.
Okay.
From a business coaching, I'm working a lot with small businesses right now. Virtually any industry, just helping small business owners really take that next step in their organization, right? How do we put all the pieces together so I can go and be a 6 or 7 figure agency? How can I really build that next step? How can I get out of, I've made the same money for the last 5 years, right? And so, really taking a deep dive into their processes, their flows, and how they do things. That's really the space that I'm spending a lot of time in right now. So those are really the two critical areas. Like I said, small businesses, we're doing coaching, business coaching, process improvement, leadership development with them as well. And then, marketing, roofing and restoration. So
beautiful. Love it, dude. Rockstar. Okay, so Adam Sinkus, they can find you ADAMSINKUS. Of course, it'll be on the show notes. Everyone, connect with this awesome guy, Adam. I appreciate the wisdom, especially about really connecting with people. Like, I love how you really put people first and caring about people, communication, acknowledgement, and building teams to be able to grow companies, to be able to make more of an impact in the world, and especially today, like, to be able to stay connected and communicating, even though there's obstacles and things going on that are or it might feel like it's difficult, might feel like it's not even possible to stay connected with the people who are on our team, in our community, in our company, whatever it might be. Like really keeping that going, keeping that flow, that trust building, because it's so important to keep nurturing those relationships, man. So thank you so much for the reminder and just being here to help people become their greatest possible self in that area of culture and team building and growing their business, man.
I appreciate it, man. I really appreciate you having me on today. So it's been fun.
Sweet. I love it. Grateful to hear it, man. Have an amazing rest of your day. Keep showing up in service, man. Keep connecting people through these difficult times. Like really, really keep it up, man. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.